About a week ago, I got the chance to visit Kings Island for the first time, and let me just say, this park is absolutely amazing. Between the great atmosphere, really nice park appearance, amazing operations, and phenomenal collection of coasters, this park really was awesome, and definitely my second favorite Cedar Fair park that I visited behind Cedar Point. Now, speaking of the coasters, this park has 14 coasters, and I have ridden 13 of them, and today I'll be ranking all the coasters in the park. This place has a really great diverse lineup of tons of different types of coasters. So today I'll be ranking all of them, and let's get right into it. Alright, so coming in at the number 14 spot is Flying Ace Aerial Chase. Now, unlike Kitty Hawk at Carowinds, this ride is actually surprisingly pretty smooth, but it doesn't really do anything. It's really slow and forceless and boring. So, yeah, it's pretty much just the weakest coaster in the park because it really doesn't do much of anything. And so number 13 is Great Pumpkin Coaster. Now, this is the only coaster in the park I haven't ridden because these Great Pumpkin Coaster credits, you do kind of have to have a kid to ride with, and I was alone on my visit, and I wasn't about to just find some random kid to ride with to get the credit, but put this above Flying Ace, because at least I'd assume these Miler Kitty coasters are actually kind of fun. It has some little airtime pops, so at least deliver some more forces than Flying Ace, but still is just a kitty coaster. Alright, so at number 12, we have Woodstock Express. Now, these Woodstock Express family wooden coasters are actually pretty fun. I've ridden the ones at Kings Dominion and Carowinds, and they actually have some nice little pops of airtime. Some of them you can even stand up on. You get some standing airtime, which is pretty surprising for a wooden coaster this small scale, but this one was very interesting. The trains were a lot tighter, and I kind of was hitting my knees throughout the whole ride, which was a little uncomfortable. And it's also very interesting how close this is to the edge of the park. Like, it's literally right next to, like, backstage areas. But, you know, it's just a fun little wooden coaster, and it's a decent stepping stone coaster for kids. Alright, so coming in at the number 11 spot, we have Backlot Stun Coaster. Now, this one is pretty similar to the one at King's Dominion. However, I think I prefer this one just because it seemed like a lot of the props and effects were working better on this one. Like a lot of the theming was just there more. But yeah, Backlot's a pretty fun coaster. You start up with a decent launch, which doesn't do too much, but you have the really intense upward helix to start off, which you can almost gray out on. And then you drop off that, and then just some nice little turns with all the cool theming, like stunt car, whatever theming. And then the indoor section's pretty intense. I really like the indoor section on these Backlot coasters. And then you drop out of that, get some pretty good airtime on that final drop that goes right past the queue. Then you have a little splashdown element, and then it turns to the brake run. It's a shorter ride, but I don't know. These Backlot coasters are pretty fun little premier coasters and nice family launch coasters. All right, so just cracking into the top 10 is Flight of Fear. Now, the one ride I got on Flight of Fear at Kings Island was really not good. It was actually pretty bad. However, I have gotten some rides on the Kings Dominion version that were pretty tolerable in some rows that are not row 2. However, I actually rode row 2. I guess the wheel seats are bad on this and the Kings Island version this year, and both were really bad. So I have a feeling that this and other seats, because I've heard this actually from a lot of people say this is the better version, the smoother one, that it could be pretty decent and forceful, but the ride I got on this was really rough and not too great. But I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and still put it at number 10, just because I think it could be a decent ride, but the one ride I had wasn't very good. Alright, so at the number 9 spot, we have Adventure Express. Now, this is definitely my favorite mine train. This is a really fun family coaster. It has some pretty good turns with some solid laterals, some good airtime. It actually feels decently fast for a mine train. I love it flying through the trees. It's even a bit of a terrain coaster. It has 2 lift hills, including that really odd second one with the really weird monkeys indoors. It was kind of an anticlimactic ending, just dumping you straight into the brake run after that. But it's still a really fun coaster, and I don't know, it's just a really solid mine train. All right, so coming at the number 8 spots, coaster actually pleasantly surprised me, and this is in Vertigo, the in Vertigo model Vekoma Boomerang coaster. Now, I had heard this thing is actually really rough, and I was pretty concerned about that, especially with those bulky SLC restraints. But it honestly wasn't too bad, and this thing is really intense. I think it feels pretty similar to a normal boomerang, and those are pretty fun, especially the ones that are really smooth and, really intense. So it's overall pretty solid Vekoma coaster. I'd say it's about as good as the better traditional boomerangs I've ridden, but it is still just a boomerang, so it's nothing too special, but I guess it is kind of cool being inverted. All right, so coming in at the number 7 spot is going to be Racer. Now, this is pretty similar dueling, or racing, I should say, out and back wooden coaster, just like Rebel Yell at King's Dominion, and I'm not calling it Racer 75. But I honestly prefer this one. I found the airtime to just be stronger. I think it had sharper hills, and a bit of added roughness honestly gave it more character. And I really like the fresh paint on this coaster. The colors are just really good. And it was just a really enjoyable classic wooden coaster. It opened with the park. It just looks really nice, especially right there next to Orion. It's just a really photogenic and honestly really fun wooden coaster. And I think it really, I don't know, it just adds a lot to the park for me. All right, so coming in at the number 6 spot is going to be Bat. Now, this is a really good air suspended coaster, and I'm actually really pleasantly surprised to have been able to ride this, considering it actually derailed earlier in the month of July, and they had to fix it, and it actually reopened a few days before I went. But this thing is actually really intense. It's not super long, but it's a nice wooded layout with some pretty fast turns, some nice swinging. And even some decent positive G's, definitely a lot more intense than the other suspended coaster I've done, being Iron Dragon. And I don't know, it's just a really fun coaster. And honestly, I'd say this is definitely a thrill coaster, unlike Iron Dragon. And it's just a really neat coaster. And I don't know, it just fills up the park's lineup really nicely. All right, so starting off the top 5 is a pretty controversial one that I think a lot of people would put higher. Now, this is Mystic Timbers, the GCI wooden coaster at the park. Now, I didn't think this ride quite lived up to the really high amount of hype it gets. It's still a really fun coaster, though. It's got a really good drop with some great laterals and even some airtime. That thing really throws you in the back row. It's got some really solid airtime, almost ejector, sustained airtime on those first 2 moments, and some pretty good laterals on the turn over the lift hill. But the rest of the airtime isn't too strong. But it does have some nice laterals and some good turns, especially those rapid-fire turns leading up to the turnaround. The turnaround itself is pretty fun. And I do like how it goes through the woods. And I imagine this is a really good night ride. It just has a really nice, fast-paced, rapid-fire feel to it and a great sense of speed. But I just didn't think it was all that good, considering I feel like the main focus is kind of the airtime, and it wasn't that strong. I definitely prefer Thunderhead. It still is a really good ride, but just a bit disappointing for me. All right, so coming in at the number 4 spot, edging out Mystic Timbers, is the Beast. Now, yes, this is my favorite wooden coaster at the park. I don't know, Beast is just such a fun coaster. It's really unique, and while it doesn't have the greatest layout, it still has some really solid force. It's got a really solid drop with some great floater and some other hills and drops that give some pretty good airtime too. A lot of the turns, well, some of them might be a little slower. They still give some really good laterals. And it has plenty of tunnels. Flying through the woods is just really awesome. And then that second half with that helix is just insane. It has an incredible sense of speed. I love that tunnel. It's super loud in there, but the laterals are amazing. It just lasts super long, especially with that drop building the speed up into it. Then it just flies through that helix. It's absolutely amazing. During the daytime, it's really solid, but at night, it's just incredible. The first half is so fast. It almost feels dangerously fast. And it's just a must-do. It's just a really, really unique coaster, and a lot of people don't like it now because they say it's smoother after the retrack. I still thought it had some roughness to give it some character, and it still just felt like a really really great ride. It's just so unique, so wacky, and honestly, it's just so long. It's just a really great ride, and definitely one of my favorite wooden coasters. Now coming in at the number 3 spot is the first of the 3 B&Ms. Now this is Banshee, the B&M invert. Yes, I do think the top 3 at this park are all B&Ms, and I was so surprised, and just my expectations were absolutely shattered with Banshee. This coaster is absolutely incredible. I came in kind of worried about the restraints, that they would be tight and make the ride uncomfortable and kind of hinder the forces. And I was just worried that it wouldn't be as intense. But once I got my first ride on this thing, those doubts were absolutely put to rest. This ride is absolutely phenomenal. It starts with that awesome Banshee scream at the top of the lift, and then you just go into a layout that is just so good. It has that amazing first drop that just slams you to the right. My second favorite invert drop behind Alpengeist. And this whole ride really just feels like Alpengeist. Just crazy, insane sense of speed, sustained throughout the whole ride. Just insane sustained positives, massive inversions. Just love every inversion in this coaster. The dive loop is awesome. The 2 vertical loops. The 0 G roll is super floaty. It's not as whippy as those older inverts, but makes up for with just being just honestly really intense, and just how sustained those Gs are. It really doesn't have any dead spots like some inverts do, and just never lets up. The pretzel knot is awesome, especially the sense of speed in that drawn out valley at the bottom of that is just amazing. And then that inline twist just gives some excellent hang time. Really every inversion besides the second vertical loop gives some amazing hang time. So mixing those amazing positives and elite hang time, this ride is just so good. And it's really well paced too. And you get some great positives even at that final helix, which is a bit slower. And especially some great positives turning up into that inline twist. I love the color scheme for this thing. It's just super long, really smooth, super intense, amazing hang time. And I don't know, I just thought it was really great, even with those vests, which, I think it would be a little better with over-shoulder restraints, but they really don't hinder much. But yeah, just a super awesome ride, definitely one of my favorite B&M inverts. Coming in at the number 2 spot is Diamondback. Now, after my first ride on this, I knew pretty much immediately that this was my new favorite B&M hyper. This thing is just absolutely phenomenal. It has a really great layout through the woods. I think a lot of the rides really help by the staggered seating in the back row. You get a lot better pull on some of those hills and the drop than on the normal shorter trains on B&M Hypers. You have that great first drop, which feels very similar to Intimidator, like similar shaping and angle, and those staggered seats. You really get dragged over it, and it just feels forever great sustained floater. And the positives on this ride are really good too, like leveling out from that drop and on a lot of those turns and valleys. Surprisingly forceful. And those first 2 Camelbacks, in the front, honestly, give some almost ejector, but in the back give some of, if not the most sustained floater I've ever felt. Now, I really loved the incredibly sustained Camelback on Candemonium before I rode this, and I thought that was like the most sustained moment of airtime I've ever felt. But these are just absolutely insane. You're literally out of your seat for like 6 or 7 seconds. It's just so good. And then you have that turnaround, which gives some decent laterals and some decent positives. And that trimmed hill, the trim honestly didn't hit too hard for me. So you get some really great sustained floater over that, and some pretty good positives coming up through that little helix into the mid-course, and some good pop coming up into the mid-course. It has this little pop into it, which is fun, then drop off the mid-course decent. And then the back, those final hills, you actually get some good drag over them and some solid floater. And then that little helix doesn't really do much, but it sets up for really awesome element drop into the splashdown. The splashdown itself is a really, really cool element, really unique. This is the only traditional splashdown in B&M Hyper. The one on Shambhala is a little bit different. And the drop into, you get some nice floater in the back. It's really photogenic, and it's just a really long ride. I love how it goes through the woods. Amazing night ride on this. Just amazing sustained floater airtime. Pretty strong too. And it's just really good, and definitely one of the best B&M Hypers out there. All right, so the best coaster at Kings Island is Orion, the B&M Giga Coaster. And this is a really great coaster. I was honestly, for a little bit, debating between this and Fury. I think I like Fury better, but there are some aspects like about Orion more. Like the drop, I honestly felt like maybe I'm just remembering Fury's drop incorrectly, but these ones actually felt a bit different. This one honestly felt had like it had a bit of stronger airtime, which is kind of interesting. I also just thought in general the airtime was stronger on this, and it did felt better paced. It's just a really great ride. It's an awesome, pretty sustained floater first drop, which is really fun. Great sense of speed, of course. It's a Giga, so you're going 90 miles an hour, but it keeps its pace really well. It's really intense. Got some really cool elements like that big kind of stangle dive type thing. I don't really consider it a wave turn because it's not one. Doesn't really give any airtime, but it's cool being sideways that high up. Then you have that reverse treble cliff, gets some nice floater coming into it, and it's great positives, curving, dropping out from that. And those films are just really cool being sideways that high up. And then you have that speed hill and the big camelback, just some great sustained ejector on that speed hill. And even some almost ejector on that camelback because the trim was off, so you really flew over it and gave some super sustained airtime. You had that really fun helix, and that sideways pop after that is just crazy strong. And same with that pop into the brake run, especially in the front. Those are really good. I got a front row run this in the rain, which is absolutely crazy. It's pretty much impossible to keep my eyes open. But it's just a super great ride. It's definitely the strongest airtime out of any B&M I've ridden. Just some really fun elements, perfectly paced. I really don't think it's too short. It packs quite a bit in. But I know a lot of people say it's too short, but I think it's really great. It's a great color scheme. It's really photogenic. It's really smooth, and it's just a ton of fun. I think it's pretty close to Diamondback, but this is still my favorite coaster in the park. All right, so there you have it. All of the coasters at Kings Island ranked, in my opinion. Now, as you can see, this park just has a really great lineup of coasters, a lot of really great quality coasters and good diversity. They have a Giga coaster, a Hyper coaster, an Invert, several great wooden coasters that are all pretty different. They have a Boomerang, a Mine Train, an Aero Suspended coaster, and some 2 launch coasters and some other solid family coasters. It's just have a great lineup. Definitely one of my favorite coaster lineups. Probably my top 5. It's just a really great park. Now, for why I haven't uploaded in so long, this is my first video in about 10 months. I don't know. I just didn't really have anything to upload for a while. I was kind of just in a recession, I guess, of ideas. I was kind of just burnt out. I really didn't have much motivation to post, and I just didn't really have much interesting things I really wanted to talk about. But since then, I have ridden a fair amount of new coasters, and I just did a new trip, which I might do some more videos on that soon, but I just came back from it, so I think I have a fair amount more to talk about. So I might be coming back for a little bit. I'm not sure. I am starting college in the fall, so that might affect a lot, but yeah, we'll see what happens. But there you have it, all my coasters, or my ranking of the coasters at Kings Island. So make sure to like this video and subscribe for hopefully some more coaster content soon. I'll see you guys later. Bye.